Today's talk is called How to Deprogram from the Matrix. The time has come that we courageously acknowledge that society has undergone a mass brainwashing, and it is time for us to actively deprogram our minds in order to be completely immersed in the evolution of our consciousness and our culture. So, how do we do this? We have to acknowledge, first of all, first and foremost, we need to recognize that programming is everywhere. It's everywhere. Whether it's in the media, whether it be in the schools, whether it be by your family, whether it be by your church, whether it be by your subgroups, whether it be by the work situation that you work in, the corporate lifestyle that you might live or lead. Programming is everywhere, but we also need to acknowledge that it isn't all bad. It isn't all bad. The reality of it is that your parents did the best they could to program you to be a decent human being, to have manners, to, not kill puppies, whatever it is, trying to teach you right from wrong. That's the positive aspects of programming, whether, if it's done by family or churches or whatever it may be. Not all programming is evil. We are never going to wipe the slate clean. What we need to do is we need to acknowledge what is the difference between positive programming and negative programming. And unfortunately, we've inherited a lot of misinformation. We've inherited a lot of superstition. We've inherited a lot of mistakes, a lot of irrational and untrue beliefs. Great example is hatred, bigotry, homophobia, racism, white supremacy. These are all inherited programs. Great example, great timing for this talk today. These are programmed into the youth. It does not come naturally. But the reality of it is that it is everywhere, whether it's your television, whether it's your job, whether it's your friends. You are constantly being bombarded and have been your entire life with some type of programming. And again, like I said, our task here is to tell the difference between what is positive and what is negative programming. When it comes to deprogramming ourselves from the matrix, another reality that we need to be aware of is the fact that programming and deprogramming are a constant, ongoing process. So while we may be taking the initiative, let's say a good example, when I went through my quote unquote deprogramming from my past lifestyle, I threw out my television. I didn't listen to commercial radio. I still don't listen to commercial radio. I still don't have cable television. But those were the two steps that I took to make sure that I was cleansing myself, starting the process of deprogramming. Now, while I was deprogramming, I was intentionally programming myself to focus on truth, programming myself on how to live better, how to be more compassionate, literally pushing ideas out of my head and ignoring truths that I thought were true my entire life, whether they be egotism, whether they be classism, whether it be racism, whatever, even political beliefs and political truths. I literally had to go out of my way to program new thoughts to replace those thoughts. Remember, programming is the way our brain reacts. Programming is coming from our subconscious. A lot of things get stirred up, like I said, whether it be certain words or phrases that will create a certain reaction within your emotional body and therefore create thoughts that you think are true. And we have to remember, we are constantly being programmed. We are constantly, once we make the initiative to begin deprogramming, it is a constant, ongoing process. This is not something that you're going to do a meditation or you're going to be listening to this program and say, now I'm been deprogrammed. Another example is, and I find this to be a big warning, and we'll talk about this more throughout today's show, is those that quote unquote go through the awakening. It's like, oh, I've been cleansed of my programming. Now, you'd be very surprised how much programming is still within you. Epiphanies or aha moments, or grand spiritual awakenings or grand political awakenings. Be weary, because the work is not done. It is only the beginning of the process. It is not to say that you've been wiped clean and you are now a pristine mind ready to be molded and programmed into a better being. It doesn't work that way. It is a constant, ongoing process. One of the things that we need to do if we are going to deprogram ourselves from the matrix is we must want to know the truth and the whole truth. Now, this is very tricky for many of us in the alternative world, for lack of a better term, because unfortunately many people fall into fear porn, conspiracy. And don't get me wrong, there are conspiracies. Yes, I believe in conspiracy truth. I don't believe in conspiracy theory, and that's the difference. We must seek the truth. And I love the fact that we call some of these movements are called the truth movement. Let's be the truth. Let's focus on the truth. Let's not speculate on speculation. This is the whole ball game. If you don't want to learn the truth, then you won't. We need to love the truth, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's unpleasant. We need to respect it. We need to cherish it, and we need to seek it above all. We cannot fall from one paradigm of thinking or one form of programming into another form of programming. We see this a lot in the alternative cultures, subcultures. Again, like I said, the truth media, consciousness media, awakening media, lightworker media, starseed media, whatever type of alternative media you're into, it's very easy to fall from quote unquote, and I don't like to use this term, but I'm going to use it just because people understand what I mean. The programmed sheep, and then we have this, quote unquote awakening we see through the veil. Then all of a sudden, we fall into another form of programming, and we get trapped in that new illusion. We get trapped in that idea because that website said it, or because that radio host said it, or that radio program said it, or someone posted it on their Facebook page, so it has to be true. And we get offended when people try to question or criticize that truth. It's just being programmed all over again. We must want to know the truth. We must respect the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how inconvenient, and no matter how unpleasant. We have got to be courageous enough to align ourselves with the highest truth, respecting the truth and seeking the truth above all things, no matter if you're a fan of myself or any other radio host or any other blogger or any other television program. Stick to the truth. Stick to the truth. Want to know it. Eat it, live it, breathe it. Now comes that part of, okay, so it's uncomfortable to admit it, but I am going to admit that I fell for it. Great example. I'll do a personal example of, what was it, 2005 or 6, whatever that presidential race. I was all for Hillary. I want a woman president. Yay, Hillary, go Hillary. And somehow during that campaign is when I had a little bit of one of my aha moments and one of my awakenings. And I was like, oh my God, I am such an idiot. She's so fill in the blank. She's one of them, I can't believe I fell for it. I can't believe I fell for it. And I know this is very much a part of being courageous and wanting to know the truth. We realize we fell for it. We fell for him. We fell for her. We fell for CNN. We fell for Fox News. We fell for Alex Jones. We fell for David Icke. We fell for whoever it is that we embrace as the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and then finally realize, you know what? Maybe they're not all true. Maybe it's not the ultimate truth. And we get a little embarrassed. It's very important at this point to not condemn ourselves. It's very important that we don't fall into self condemnation, self criticism. It just so happens that self condemnation and self criticism are a part of the brainwashing and indoctrination process. So this is very counterproductive when it comes to deprogramming yourself. Do not self criticize yourself. Do not self criticize yourself. Do not fall for the condemnation, the language in your brain. Do not be counterproductive. You have been programmed to, if you've been programmed to believe some goofy idea, and I've fallen for it myself back in my conspiracy days. What was it? Oh gosh, Treva, I think you remember Blossom Goodchild, and the aliens were coming to take everybody away. And I remember running outside. What was it? October 16th, 2007 or something like that. And the motherships are coming, and I was out there looking for the mothership, and I'm like, where's the mothership? I fell for a goofy idea, and we just need to recognize that it is just an irrational, illogical, goofy idea. It's all right to fall for it. We cannot condemn ourselves for having believed it for a while. If anything, we need to be happy that we pulled ourselves out of it. If I like this. It's like exploring the Wild West. If you find you have an arrow stuck in your back, you pull it out. Don't wallow in self-contempt and guilt. Don't condemn yourself for having stupidly gotten an arrow stuck in your back. Don't imagine that you're somehow all screwed up for having gotten an arrow stuck in your back. And don't imagine that finding an arrow stuck in your back proves that you are somehow inferior. Just pull the arrow out and get on with your life. Let it go. Move on. Next. Focus on truth. Focus on the future. Focus on your deprogramming. Focus on your deprogramming. Do not worry about falling for it. Everyone does it. We've all done it. Or else we wouldn't be seeking truth. It's kind of a side effect. It's kind of a side effect of seeking the truth. Sometimes you'll fall for a half-truth. Sometimes you'll fall for speculative truth. Sometimes you'll fall for an insanely crazy idea because it was so far out of the box that it had to be true. It's all right. You don't need to condemn yourself for it. Another aspect of deprogramming ourselves from the matrix is, and as we're talking about this condemnation, we need to be aware of external condemnation or passive aggressive condemnation. And again, speaking that if this leads to you condemning yourself or self-criticizing yourself, this is all a part of the whole brainwashing game. A great example of this, of course, is the media. Anything that, and this is what I mean by passive-aggressive condemnation. Beer commercials are a great example of passive-aggressive condemnation. Here we have this moron with all these gorgeous women around him, and he's drinking that beer, and it's basically, that's passive-aggressive condemnation. If you don't have this beer, you're not cool. You're not going to have that pretty girl. Or for women, we see it all the time in the magazines. Gorgeous women in, Victoria's Secret's lingerie and tons of makeup and their hair done and whatnot. And what does that tell them? That's passive-aggressive condemnation. If you don't have this bra, if you don't look like this, you are not beautiful. We see it all the time. We also see it within our friends, and we see it within our families. We see it at our jobs. We see it at our churches. Be careful of the churches. They are great at creating self criticism and self condemnation. Be very aware. We again, if you are focused on the truth, the whole truth, and deprogramming yourself, you have to be courageous enough to say, you know what, that pastor makes me feel like crap. That religion makes me feel like crap. That that nun, that speaker, that new age philosopher, whoever it is, whatever your spiritual path is, if they are making you feel bad, if they are degrading you and not lifting you up to accept yourself wholly and fully, that leads to self condemnation. Be very, very careful. We cannot be in a place, we cannot deprogram ourselves if we allow this type of programming into our lives daily, weekly, monthly, however often it is that you are around it. Um, we need to understand that when someone is reading us and listing our faults, it's always meant that it always means that they want to control you. Any organization, any leader, any church, any religion, any temple, whatever it is, anything that wants to list your faults and make you feel bad about who you are is trying to control you. Be very aware of that, especially in the media, especially in television programs, especially in radio programs. You know, they want you to change your behavior to something that they want, to something that is in line with their belief or in line with them to make a profit. It's not about you thinking for yourself. It's shaming you into acting and behaving a certain way. So we need to be very, very aware of external condemnation, passive aggressive condemnation, anything external that brings you to a place of self criticism, self condemnation, or feeling any more flawed or inferior than you need to be, because we're not. We're not. Everyone is exactly where they need to be. Everyone looks the way they need to look. Everyone lives the way they need to live. This is who we are. You need to be proud of who you are. As long as you're not hurting anybody, do what you will. That's the bottom line. Let's extend that a little bit further now, talking about organizations that are trying to clip your wings. One of the most common things I see, and you all know I'm a very big spiritual person. I'm a spiritual teacher. I belong to multiple organizations. I belong to multiple groups. I associate myself with many different types of spiritual people. And I can't help but notice that within a certain ilk, I'll say, there are those that don't want us to feel our feelings. I think we need to be very, very careful when other people or other organizations are trying to clip your wings, trying to keep you from feeling what you're feeling. A great example of this is you hear it all the time. A lot of these new age metaphysical, fluffy bunny, law of attraction wannabe stuff is, oh, don't feel anything bad. You'll attract it to yourself, and you can never be angry. I remember in recovery, you're not allowed to get angry because alcoholics can't handle anger, so you can never get angry. What? Don't be yourself. Don't acknowledge your feelings. What kind of programming is that? I have to ask myself. We need to be very careful, again, the idea that people are not letting you feel what you feel, or organizations or anything that tries to tell you what you feel is not justified is a form of external programming. And they were probably programmed themselves, so you kind of have to forgive them and move on. But If I'm angry, I'm going to be angry. If I'm sad, I'm going to be sad. I literally had a woman once tell me, you say you're spiritual, but you do this and you get angry and you get sad and you've got a filthy mouth when you get angry or something. I forgot what it was. I'm making it up. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not making it up. I'm paraphrasing it. But I was like, what? Just because I'm spiritual, I don't feel, I don't get angry, I don't get frustrated, I don't get outraged, I don't get depressed. Come on. We are allowed to feel what we're feeling. You know, again, it drives me crazy to hear, things like, an AA saying you cannot handle anger. That should be left to those better qualified to handle it. That's pseudo religious garbage, and it will cripple you from moving forward. It will cripple you from deprogramming, from by putting doubt that you are not worthy. So beware of anything that says you are not worthy, that you can't handle it. You can't handle the truth. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And you will get by. You will be able to move on, and you will be able to get something out of your life that has not been programmed into you to believe that it's what you want. Be very aware of all of that. And let's move on. Let's move on to the second half of today's program. And the next topic that we must be aware of as we are going through the deprogramming process that we have initiated, we must initiate the process ourselves, of course, is we need to be aware of wanting to believe and speculation. And what I mean by that is how many times well, here, a great example. A great example is our government. Our national government, the nationalism, the nationalistic fervor that is out there in the United States. We people want to believe that we are right, that we are doing the right thing by going and starting these wars in the Middle East to create world peace and whatnot. It goes on with so many other different things, wanting to believe in the fact that Jesus Christ is going to come back one day and save the world, wanting to believe that UFOs, the mothership, is coming and going to lift us off and take us to another place. I have seen, and we see it all the time in, subculture, alternative subculture, where people will go out of their way trying to make something real that is not real. Many times I'll see, a video of a UFO. I'm like, that's not a UFO. I'll see a picture of a ghost. It's like, that's not a ghost. That's a fingerprint. The orbs that are really dust on the lens. Wanting to believe, making ourselves believe it and doing everything we can to, you know, make it real. Another one, great example is, the Illuminati symbols that are everywhere. It's like, oh, they bent their arm and it made a triangle. See, it's a triangle. That's the Illuminati. Or, they were waving and one finger stuck up higher than the other. So that's the Illuminati. Wanting to believe, speculating, not focusing on the fact, but what you're speculating to be the truth, wanting it to be the truth so badly that it distorts reality. Be very careful of wanting to believe. Be very careful of needing to believe. What was it? The Wrong Way. There's a quote from the book, The Wrong Way Home, Uncovering the Patterns of Cult Behavior in American Society. And the quote is by Dr. Arthur Diekman. And he says, wanting to believe is perhaps the most powerful dynamic initiating and sustaining cult-like behavior. Stick to the truth. Stick to the truth. Understand that just because some radio broadcaster or some website or some Facebook page says the aliens are going to land at the Olympics. I remember that one. And everyone's going to be saved. And the aliens are going to talk to our leaders, and we're going to have galactic peace, for the rest of time. And it's a wonderful thing that we'd want to believe. Of course, I want to believe that. Anybody would want to believe that. But to want to believe in speculation and acknowledging it as a truth are very, very different things. So instead of wanting to believe, how about wanting to know the truth? Wanting to know the truth. There is so much good in this world. We don't need to speculate on the bad. We don't need to want to believe that the tanks are going to roll down the street and we're all going to have martial law, that the government is in our pockets listening to us, which whatever, some of it's true, some of it is true, yeah, some. But to speculate these types of things, wanting to believe that we're right, we have to acknowledge when we're wrong. We need to acknowledge when we are merely speculating. Are we speculating, or am I wanting to believe? And the same goes with personal behavior and personal relationships. How many times have you speculated that your best friend is talking behind your back? Or how many times have you speculated that your wife was cheating? Or how many times have you speculated that somebody's cheating you? And none of it turns out to be true. But you wanted to believe it just so you could be right. That's a part of brainwashing. That is a part of brainwashing yourself. That's self-brainwashing. Don't want to believe. Don't speculate. Want to know the truth. Want to know the truth about what the media puts out, about what that Facebook page puts out, about what the radio stations put out, what that radio host is talking about. Want to know the truth. Don't just jump on the bandwagon because you want to believe. Let's move on to what I feel is probably the most important part of deprogramming. And this has a lot to do with a very simple Buddhist philosophy, even though I'm not going to go there with that today, but it's a very simple philosophy, a simple Eastern philosophy of mindfulness. Watch your own mind. Watch your own mind. What cycle is your brain on right now? Is your brain thinking about what you have to do tomorrow? Is your brain thinking about what to believe? Just be the observer. Watch your thoughts. Watch your attitudes. Watch your slogans. How many times have you said, even if it's something positive, I'm going to have an attitude of gratitude. That's a slogan. Where did that come from? How does that make you feel? Of course it might be positive. Again, I did say that there is positive programming out there, but watch your slogans, as well as, negative things, like if it's too good to be true. If it's that good, it's too good to be true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. So watch your thoughts, watch your attitudes, learn how to be the observer of your thoughts. Learn the technique of mindfulness. Learn the technique of being the observer of your thoughts. Learn to be the observer of your attitudes. Learn to be the observer of the slogans. And not only within your own mind, be aware of the words and the attitudes and everything that goes on around you as well. Be aware how this information comes to play. A great example, we see it all the time. Some people, especially politicians and the media, are very skilled at tossing out buzzwords, phrases, slogans that arouse certain desires or emotional responses within you, whether they are positive or negative. They are manipulating you. They are messing with your mind. They are manipulating your feelings. In the United States alone, I can think of two words, two phrases that get everyone in an uproar. Everyone in an uproar. Abortion. Oh, immediately I bet you your emotional baggage just kicked in. Whether you're for it or against it, the emotional baggage kicked in. We have been manipulated by the media for the word abortion to be a manipulating buzzword in our society. Think about it. Think about it. You cannot put that word on Facebook. You cannot bring that word up in a very calm, whether I don't care if it's an intellectual discussion, a casual discussion, whatever. You can't bring up that word. Everyone goes crazy, for, against, don't care, whatever. It is because we have been brainwashed to let that be a buzzword to manipulate the masses. The same thing goes with the word racism. Same thing. There's no such thing as racism. Yes, there is. There's no such thing. Yes, there is. These are buzzwords and slogans that have been cultivated, probably tested by marketing groups to see how people react to it, that are being thrown out in the media all the time to manipulate us, to manipulate the masses, to manipulate our reactions, and worst of all, to keep us divided. Gay marriage is another one. You talk about gay marriage, you're going to divide the room. You personally will feel certain emotions. You will feel certain feelings. These are buzzwords. These are manipulations. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for it. Know when you're being played. Know when they're messing with you. Know when you're being manipulated. Be aware. Start noticing this. Notice how you react. Notice how other people react. Notice how your attitudes change. And start being aware of these quote unquote slogans that I've mentioned and other slogans. There's many more out there. You'll see liberal, conservative, left wing, right wing. Those are slogans. Slogans that get people crazy. That get people crazy, and we fall for it over and over and over again. Here's another great slogan. Well, it's not a great slogan, but one that's been around for quite a while. And it's this is one I've noticed where it's being repeated over and over again. And I've seen it repeated over the last, 20 years. I remember I used to say it back in 1999, I want to say. When was it? When the Al Gore Bush, debacle was. That was a long time ago. But I remember saying to my friend who wanted to vote for, what was his name? The Green guy. I forgot his name. The Green Party guy. You can't vote for a third party. They'll never win. You're taking away votes from the main party, candidate. And what happened during the next election? I heard the same thing about Ron Paul. You can't vote for Ron Paul. He'll never win. You're taking votes away from the main candidate who needs to win. And now, again, with this cycle coming up, I'm hearing the very same thing about any third party. You can't vote third party. They're never going to win. Well, guess what? A third party would win if everyone would stop thinking like that and voted with their heart and did what they felt and didn't listen to these ridiculous slogans. These are slogans. Nothing more, nothing less. I don't know how they got out there. Like I said, maybe some marketing company did all this research and said, let's put that slogan out there, and it became a buzzword, a buzz slogan. It's everywhere. Be aware of it. Know when you're being manipulated. Watch your mind, watch your thoughts, watch your attitude, and watch for the slogans, watch for the buzzwords. Watch out for when you're being manipulated. This also goes, on the other hand, on the other side, beware of the ego game. The ego game is where they try to tell you how wonderful you are and how special you are, and the work you're doing is so special. A great example is, evangelicals. Oh, we are here to save the world from the devil. We are here doing God's work. This is, and I'm special because I'm doing God's work. No, you're not. and there's, thousands of gods out there. So, speaking truthfully, you're one of many gods, and you're just saying that this one is right. And again, the whole idea of being manipulated into thinking that you're special, thinking that you're on a mission. A great example, we see it with white supremacist groups and whatnot. We need to save America. From what? Diversity? What are you saving America from? From evolving into a multicultural society? Oh, that's so bad. But how do we react? How do you react? Do you get Are you reactive? That's a great key here. Are you being reactive or are you being proactive? And I talk about that a lot. And I'm going to hopefully do a consciousness talk on proactive and reactive, but don't be reactive. Watch your mind, watch your thoughts, watch your attitudes, and watch your slogans. The other thing that we need to watch out for is our desires and our fears. I believe this is probably the heart of deprogramming. I believe this is the heart of us taking the initiative to begin deprogramming ourselves and living. I like the word sovereign mind. Living within a sovereign mind, being a sovereign mind, a sovereign spirit who thinks for themselves. And watching our desires and fears is a constant. This is a never-ending task. I would suggest that you watch your desires and fears all day long if you can. Do it as much as you can or as much as you can remember to. I think it's very important that we look at not only what it is that we want, but what it is that we are afraid of, and see how that manipulates our way of thinking. We're very good at self-manipulating, by the way. We're not only manipulated by television, we're not only manipulated by media, we're not only manipulated by politicians and shysters and snake oil salesmen. We do a lot of self-manipulating. And that all has to do with what we want and what we are afraid of. And to be honest about what we really want. Make a note of what it is you want. Be aware of what it is you want. You want love, you want status, approval, security, youth, sex, beauty. What is it that you want? Notice how certain words and certain things arouse these desires to have that. I'm not saying whether they're good or bad, but I'm just saying that our mind will react when we hear, or when we think about the desires that we have, whether we want love, status, sex, security, whatever it is, it becomes very reactive. So I guess maybe it is better to say, start acknowledging your reactions to your desires and fears. And I can't believe we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to try to wrap things up ever so quickly with these last two very important points. Break the exclusivity of your information input. Break it. If you are strictly listening to Revolution Radio, don't get me wrong, I love Revolution Radio. There are dozens and dozens of programs, but allow there to be other forms of media coming in, of other forms of information. If you are only watching CNN, maybe you might want to start watching MSNBC or Fox or whatever it is. But and of course, I do not recommend any corporate media personally. I'd rather you listen to Revolution Radio all day long. But I do feel it's very important that we don't be exclusive as to where our information come from. Don't have just one newspaper you read. Read 3 or 4. Don't just have one radio show or one website that you visit. Go to many of them. Don't just hang out on one Facebook page that posts information. Have multiple. Have more than one social media that you pay attention to if that's what you're into. But if anything, I think and I feel at the very beginning of initiating this, of initiating the deprogramming process, is to take a media fast. Take a media fast. If it means getting off Facebook, get off Facebook. If it means canceling your cable subscription, cancel your cable. If you can't control yourself, to not read news, whether it be alternative or mainstream, you obviously have a problem. But I would say it's very, very important at the beginning to take a media fast, even if it's only for 7 days. Don't watch any news, don't listen to any news, don't read any news. Get to know your thoughts. People are very scared of looking at who they are and what is really going on in their mind. And for me, that is probably one of the most important things you can do to deprogram yourself. Learn to sit in silence and to be comfortable with it. You don't always need to be reading about the activist action in Turkey, the revolt or whatever. You don't always need to be listening to conspiracy radio. You don't always need to be listening to CNN in the background. You don't always need to be reading your local newspaper to feel that you are connected. You are connected no matter what. You don't need media for that. And last but not least, we're running out of time. So let me just say, once you've had that media fast, become vigilant as to what you expose your senses to. Be very careful of what you give your attention to. Stop giving attention to fear porn. Stop giving your attention to conspiracy theory. And I mean theory, not fact. There's a big difference. If you want to do conspiracy fact, go for it. But be very weary of those who use speculation within their media. Be very weary. Become vigilant not to allow media that embraces speculation, question, and just wants to create a reaction within you. Know when you're being manipulated by the media, and you will. After that media fast, you're going to say, wow, that radio announcer really always gets me riled up. Is he manipulating me? Or that website is always talking about, the end of America or something. Are they trying to manipulate me? Are they trying to get a rise out of me? Become vigilant. Don't let people manipulate you. Don't let media manipulate you. And last but not least, be a good person. Bottom line, be a good person, have compassion, know that it's okay to be good. Many people say it's weak. It's not weak. It is the greatest strength you will ever have, to be honest, to have integrity, to have compassion, to be diplomatic, to be gentle, and to be loving. That is true strength. We have been programmed that it is weakness. That is the biggest lie on the planet. That has been the biggest lie that we have in society. So move beyond that. Become a better person. Become a loving person. Have compassion and have integrity in all things that you do.